Hi, my name is Amanda Linz, and this is my presentation on differentiated instruction for educating exceptional students. So first off, what is differentiated instruction? It's got a bit of a complicated name, but it's a pretty easy concept, and it's when a teacher anticipates individual students' needs and plans accordingly. When a teacher has a lesson plan in place for every child, where every child is considered, um, then we see that every child is able to succeed. So students with disabilities, they're not falling behind because they're getting discouraged. And then students with high abilities are being challenged in their work and also able to succeed. Um, Also, we know that using differentiated instruction encourages learning. When students are discouraged, we see more behavior problems, we see less engagement, and we see less strive to do well. So when students are in an environment where they feel heard and understood, and they're given plans that work for them, we see much better progress and much more will to succeed from them, more responsibility for their learning. So how do teachers use differentiated instruction in their classroom? What does it look like? So there are four basic ways that we tailor our kids' lessons plans for them, and that's through the content, the process, the product, and the learning environment. So first, let's talk about the content. A very basic example of a way to tailor content is if we look at the fact that all students will be at different mastery levels. And that really doesn't matter what age group, what area we're teaching or anything. All students are going to be at different mastery levels, especially when you have up to 25, 30 kids in a classroom. So let's look at an example of a kindergarten classroom. Incoming students, you're going to have some students who have never even picked up a pencil before. So obviously they do not know how to write any letters, words, maybe not even their name, nothing. And then you have students who, they've been working on it a little bit. They can maybe write their name, maybe a few other words here or there. They can at least attempt. And then you're going to have the students with a pretty high mastery level who have mastered their name, who have mastered the technique of writing sentences, who really, have a higher ability and mastery already when it comes to reading and writing. So already we're seeing, starting out right off in kindergarten, students are going to be at different levels. And we're going to have to make sure that we're pushing those who are a little bit behind, but not too much. And then the ones who are more higher ability are not being ignored for the fact that they already know how to do an assignment. So let's say we take that same example and maybe we work on writing a little bit. And you're going to have the students who are higher ability, you're going to want to challenge them a bit more. Maybe ask them to write a couple of sentences on their favorite summer activity. And then you're going to have students who have never picked up a pencil and need a little extra help. You're going to be able to work with them throughout the lesson, give them some one-on-one attention, help them master their name, because really that's such a basic way to start out in the writing technique, students mastering their name. So right there, we're going to see that we're going to have to tailor our lesson plan for these three different levels that we have available. One good way to help students who are high ability when it comes to content, excuse me, I've been fighting a cough, so my throat's a little raspy, is to give students extra work, more challenging work. If they have an area such as math or reading where they're really ahead of the pack, then we'll want to make sure that we challenge them a bit more, keep them interested, don't let them get bored so that they get discouraged and don't want to continue learning. Next, let's look at the process. So most people have a preferred learning style, and we can see that in the classroom at a very young age group. Some students prefer to learn visually, some auditorily, and some kinesthetically, which is through word. So what we can do is we can apply what we know about the learning process for each child and make that a goal in our learning lesson plan, where we know that this child really needs more interaction and more of an interactive learning style, whereas another student would learn best by hearing the lesson plan spoken out loud, maybe a little bit more in depth. And another, all you need to do is give them a handout or a textbook and they're good to go. So let's say you're a teacher, you're the only teacher in a classroom with 20 students, so you have all 3 of these students all together. So what you might want to do is create just kind of a process where you're combining a couple of these. So you can maybe give them a handout or a textbook area that they need to read, while also reading it along with them on a projector, or using a YouTube video that helps kind of bring the information to them during your lesson plan. So you can do that for like 20 or 30 minutes or say, and then let's say you move on to an activity that you want to do. So you want to have extra handouts available for those who need more visual stimulation or a kinesthetic learning style. Excuse me. You can also have interactive assignments available on computers for those who need a more kinesthetic learning process. And then you can also have extra videos or audiobooks available for the students who need more auditory learning. So next, let's look at the product, which is basically just an end of lesson evaluation that we give students. And these come in all types of varieties, from tests, papers, projects. But overall, what we can do is kind of individualize this a little bit. So one example is, like, let's say we have a blind student in classroom. We're not going to give that student a paper test and expect them to complete it on their own. We're going to need to either give them a para who can help read it out loud, or even give them an audio test on the computer that they're able to do independently. So we're still giving them access to an independent learning style that works for them. Another consideration is students with ADHD. They don't need long, drawn out, and complicated instructions and products. They need, simplified instructions, procedures, and a final product. We need to make sure that they're not getting frustrated and a feeling of discouragement where they decide to give up on the project completely. Next, we need to consider the learning environment. And really, the learning environment is key for all students. It doesn't matter where their ability level is at. A student cannot learn in a chaotic, loud, and unorganized room. And really, neither can we as adults, I don't think. So that's really, to me, that's really key in bringing this home for us. So something that I've seen a lot recently is flexible seating options. And I really like this because I feel like it's tailored to so many different children's needs. It works well for students with sensory processing disorder or autism. It works well for students with hyperactivity. It works well for high ability students. This is something that gives students kind of a choice in their classroom and a choice in their learning. And really giving them choices and independence gives them a sense of responsibility and encourages learning further. Something also to consider is doing small groups and independent lessons or reading. Some students are pretty shy, and putting them into groups can be overwhelming for them, and it can cause them to kind of withdraw and not want to participate in the assignment, as opposed to if they were doing it independently, they might really succeed in that assignment. So we kind of need to learn to know our students, what the best environment for them is, and make sure that we are planning accordingly. Something I also really like is the idea of students with sensory processing disorder or mild autism to be able to have kind of like a calm down area, maybe behind a bookshelf where they can use headphones. They can have to kind of keep them away from the chaotic environment, kind of allow them to relax. That way they're able, to come back into the learning environment when they're ready. So how do teachers prepare for differentiated instruction in a classroom? First and most importantly is building relationships. We need to build relationships with our students, with our parents, with past and other teachers that are assisting us. That goes for, the music teachers. We need to know how the students are interacting with the music teachers, with the physical education teachers, maybe some helpful tips from past teachers, what they found successful in the classroom. But most importantly, with the students, because the students need to feel welcome and comfortable in our environment, or else they're not going to want to learn with us. And we need to be able to pay attention to their struggles and to listen to them and teach them or treat them like an individual at all times. Students can also, teachers can also prepare by fully understanding any IEPs they have for any children. An IEP is an individualized education plan, and it kind of lays out the needs and learning plan for that individual child. Next, be predictable. All kids thrive on structure and consistency. Some of the things that I remember some of my favorite teachers in classrooms doing is kind of having a schedule laid out on the board. And this could go for if you have, let's say you have first graders, so they're in your classroom all day, having a schedule in place so they know what's to come next, and they know every day at 9 o'clock we do this, at 10 o'clock we do that. That's very helpful for them and their learning environment. And let's see here. Sorry, observe and think ahead. So if we can anticipate a student's learning issues, then we can anticipate the needs that they're going to need for us. We can be prepared. We can have handouts, the extra interactions that they need and the extra workbooks that they need. If we're able to know what their individual problems are going to be, then when that problem arises, we're going to be able to nip it in the bud right away and move on and help them in the best way possible. Because if we fall behind with one student, then we're falling behind with all students and the whole entire lesson plan. We should also, like I said, have all materials ready. We do not want, if we have a child who needs to do an interactive program for the end product, we don't want to wait until it's time to do that and turn on the computer and start everything up. We want to have it ready to go. That way they're immediately able to get into the process to work on the product just as the other students are. We need to be flexible. We need to understand that the students we're getting at the beginning of the year are not the students we're going to have at the end of the year. Everyone's going to change throughout the school year. Maybe the way that they need us to teach them at the beginning of the year kind of changes over time. So we need to observe them. We need to be able to be flexible with our teaching for them, and definitely just know that they're going to change, we're going to change, the environment's going to change, and we're going to need to be able to stay on top of that at all times. So quickly, let's see here. What is not differentiated instruction? That's important to know. So what is not differentiated instruction? Delivering instruction by lecture alone. So as we have talked about a little bit, everyone has a different learning style. And if all you're doing is lecturing to a class, you are definitely not appealing to all of the students. And so those who don't learn very well through auditory, they're not going to take in the lesson plan. They're not going to be able to build on it. We need to provide different things available for the different students and how they learn. Group students at the beginning of the year based on last year's achievement scores. We know that students are not their achievement scores. We know that some students test badly. We know that really that is such a small and almost unimportant aspect of who they are as a person and how they need for us to teach them. So really that's just a complete non-issue, and it's not something we should even consider when moving forward with our lesson plans. Give students bonus points for classroom participation. As I've hit on a little bit, some students are shy and they withdraw and they stop wanting to participate. We definitely don't want to push those students to participate in class because that doesn't mean that they're not going to succeed in written assignments or in other areas. And giving them bonus points for participating seems a little silly and a bit unfair. So that's definitely 3 ways that we do not use differentiated instruction in the classroom.